Captain Jake Morrison had been staring at empty space for 3 months. The bridge of the UES Liberty felt more like a tomb than the command center of humanity's most advanced ship. Every day brought the same routine: scan the next star system, find nothing but dead rocks and cold gas, move on to the next one. For 5,000 years, humans had been searching the galaxy for signs of intelligent life. They had found ancient ruins, dead cities, and the bones of civilizations that died long before Earth's sun was born. But never once had they heard a living voice call back from the darkness. Amy Carter sat at her communication station, monitoring frequencies that had been silent since before the pyramids were built. She was good at her job, maybe the best comm officer in the fleet. But there was only so much nothing a person could listen to before it started eating at their soul. She adjusted her headset and ran another sweep of the radio spectrum, expecting the same cosmic background noise she had heard every day for the past year. Then something changed. Amy's hand froze over her console. The signal was faint, almost lost in the static, but it was there. It had structure, patterns that no natural phenomenon could create. Her heart began to race as she fine-tuned the receiver, trying to pull the signal out of the noise. The bridge fell silent around her as other crew members noticed her sudden focus. "Captain," Amy said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm picking up something on long-range communications. It's not natural." Jake turned from the viewport where he had been watching another lifeless world spin slowly in the void. "Are you sure? We've had false alarms before." Amy nodded, her hands flying over her controls. "This is different, sir. It's structured, repetitive. Someone is trying to communicate." She paused, listening intently to her headphones. "Sir, I think it's a distress call." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Danny Brooks, the chief engineer, looked up from his technical reports. Dr. Patricia Wells, the ship's science officer, abandoned her analysis of mineral samples. For the first time in months, maybe years, something was happening. Jake moved to Amy's station, looking over her shoulder at the displays showing the signal's characteristics. The patterns were complex but definitely artificial. After 5 millennia of silence, someone was finally talking back. "Can you decode it?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "Not yet, sir. The language is completely unknown, but I'm detecting what might be mathematical sequences, possibly attempts at establishing basic communication protocols." Jake activated the ship's intercom. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately. This is not a drill." He turned back to Amy. "Keep working on that signal. I want to know everything about it." Over the next several hours, the Liberty's crew worked frantically to decode the transmission. Dr. Wells applied every linguistic analysis tool in their computer banks. Danny Brooks examined the signal's technical properties, looking for clues about the technology that sent it. Amy continued to refine the reception, pulling clearer and clearer versions of the message from the cosmic background. The breakthrough came when Dr. Wells recognized that parts of the transmission contained mathematical constants: pi, the golden ratio, prime number sequences. Universal concepts that any intelligent species would understand. Using these as reference points, she began to construct a basic translation matrix. The first words to emerge from the static were simple: "Help us." As more of the message became clear, a story of desperate urgency unfolded. The transmission came from something called the Valoran Coalition, a group of species from 12 star systems. They spoke of an ancient enemy that had returned from the edge of the galaxy, consuming worlds and enslaving entire civilizations. But the most shocking revelation came near the end of the message. The Valorans knew about humanity. They had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for humans to develop space travel and return to what they called the greater community. "Return?" Jake asked, as Dr. Wells read the translated message aloud. "What do they mean, return?" The answer came in the next section of the transmission. According to the Valorans, humanity had once been part of a vast galactic alliance. 5,000 years ago, humans had fought alongside dozens of other species in a war against the very enemy that now threatened the galaxy again. After winning that ancient conflict, humanity had chosen isolation, withdrawing to their home system and somehow erasing all memory of their galactic past. The message continued with increasingly urgent pleas. The enemy, which the Valerans called the Devourers, possessed technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. They could drain the life from entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty husks floating in space. 13 star systems had already fallen in the past year, their populations either killed or converted into mindless slaves. But there was hope. The Valerans believed that humans possessed something unique, some quality that made them immune to the Devourers' most dangerous weapons. In the ancient war, humanity had been the key to victory. Now, with the enemy returned and stronger than before, the galaxy's survival might once again depend on human intervention. Jake ordered the message transmitted immediately to Earth Command. Within hours, every major government on Earth was in emergency session. Admiral Lisa Morgan, commanding the combined fleet from Luna Station, began mobilizing every available ship. President Helen Ross convened the World Council, bringing together leaders from every nation to discuss humanity's response to this impossible situation. Dr. Kevin Shaw, Earth's leading expert on alien life, was brought in to analyze the biological data included in the Valeran transmission. What he found supported their incredible claims. Hidden in human DNA were genetic markers that could only have resulted from exposure to alien environments. Somehow, impossibly, the human species carried evidence of their forgotten stellar heritage. The debates on Earth were intense. Some leaders argued that the message could be a trap, an attempt by hostile aliens to lure humanity into a conflict that was none of their business. Others pointed out that if the Valerans were telling the truth, Earth itself would eventually be threatened by these devourers. But for Jake Morrison and the crew of the Liberty, the choice was clear. They had spent their careers searching for proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. Now that proof had found them, and it came with a desperate plea for help. Whatever humanity had been in the past, whatever role they had played in that ancient war, the galaxy was calling on them to remember. Amy continued to monitor the Valeran frequency, receiving updates on the enemy's advance. Each report brought news of another world consumed, another species enslaved or destroyed. The Devourers were moving faster now, as if they sensed that their ancient enemies had been contacted. As Jake stood on his bridge, watching the stars that no longer seemed empty and cold, he knew that everything was about to change. Humanity's long isolation was over. The silence that had lasted 5,000 years had finally been broken, and with it came the call to war. The question now was not whether humanity would answer that call, but whether they still possessed the strength and courage that had once saved the galaxy. In the depths of space, ancient enemies stirred, and the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. Colonel Ryan Martinez felt his stomach drop as the UES Defiance came out of hyperspace. He had expected to find a primitive world, maybe some basic cities and simple technology. Instead, he was looking at something that seemed impossible. Valera, Prime hung before them like a jewel, its cities floating among the clouds connected by bridges of pure light. Massive structures orbited the planet, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Sir," said Lieutenant Danny Brooks from the navigation station, "I'm reading energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. These people have technology we can't even understand." Ryan nodded, trying to hide his amazement from his crew. The Valerans had been watching humanity for centuries, waiting for them to develop space travel. Now he understood why they had waited so long. Compared to this, Earth looked like a backwater planet where children played with simple toys. A voice came through the communication system, speaking perfect English with only a slight accent. "Welcome, Colonel Martinez. We have been waiting for your arrival. Please follow the guidance beacons to the diplomatic station." The diplomatic station turned out to be a structure the size of a small moon, covered in gardens and waterfalls that defied gravity. As the Defiance docked with the station, Ryan could see beings moving through transparent corridors, some floating, others walking on surfaces that seemed to shift and change as they moved. Dr. Patricia Wells was the first human to step onto the station, her scientific instruments already scanning everything around her. The air was clean and fresh, filled with the scent of flowers that had never grown on any world humans had seen. The beings who greeted them were tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. "I am Keeper Zethus," said their host, bowing slightly. "I speak for the Coalition in matters concerning your species. We are honored by your presence here." Ryan studied the alien carefully. Zethus looked fragile, almost delicate, but there was something in his eyes that spoke of great age and wisdom. "Our scientists tell us that you've been watching Earth for a long time. Why?" Zethus smiled, an expression that somehow looked natural on his alien features. "Because we remember what your people were, and we hoped for what they might become. Again. Come, let us show you the truth about your past." They were led through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past rooms filled with technology that hummed with quiet power. In one chamber, Ryan saw what looked like a small star contained within a sphere of crystal, providing endless energy to the station. In another, he watched Valeran scientists working with materials that shifted between solid and liquid states at will. The archive chamber was the largest room Ryan had ever seen. The walls stretched up into darkness, covered with millions of crystal panels that glowed with soft light. Each panel, Zethus explained, contained the memories and knowledge of entire civilizations, preserved for thousands of years. "Your species was not always confined to one small system," Zethus said as he activated one of the panels. The crystal began to glow brighter, and suddenly the air above it filled with images. Ryan gasped as he saw human soldiers fighting alongside, alien warriors, their weapons blazing as they battled creatures that seemed to be made of living shadow. Dr. Wells moved closer to the display, her scientific training overcoming her amazement. "These are humans? But they're using technology we don't have, fighting with weapons we've never seen. 5,000 years ago, your people were the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known," Zethus explained. "Not because they were the strongest or had the best weapons, but because they could adapt to any situation. While other species fought the same way for millions of years, humans changed their tactics with every battle." The images shifted, showing massive space battles where human ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually perfectly coordinated. Ryan watched human soldiers fighting in environments that would kill most other species, adapting their equipment and tactics to each new challenge. "The Devourers had conquered half the galaxy before your people joined the war," Zethus continued. "They fed on the despair of conquered civilizations, growing stronger with each world they destroyed. But humans were different. They never despaired, never gave up, no matter how hopeless things seemed." Dr. Wells was studying her instruments, taking readings from the memory crystals. "The genetic markers we found in human DNA, they came from this time period?" Zethus nodded. "Your ancestors traveled to dozens of worlds, breathed alien air, ate alien food. Their bodies adapted, carrying those changes in their genes. Even after 5,000 years, you still carry the mark of your stellar heritage." The next set of images showed the final battle of the ancient war. Ryan watched in fascination as human fleets led a massive assault on what looked like a fortress the size of a planet. The fighting was fierce, with ships exploding in silent flashes of light while others pressed forward, never stopping, never retreating. "We won," Ryan said, more statement than question. "You won," Zethus agreed. "The Devourers were driven back to the edge of the galaxy, their power broken, but the victory came at a great cost. Your people had become something different during the war, harder and more ruthless than they had been before. Your leaders made a difficult choice." The images changed again, showing human fleets leaving their allies and heading back toward Earth. But before they left, Ryan saw something that amazed him. Human scientists were working with alien technology, copying and studying everything they could, taking the knowledge with them. "They chose isolation," Dr. Wells said, understanding dawning in her voice. "They took themselves out of galactic affairs to preserve their humanity. And to grow stronger," Zethus added. "Your ancestors knew that the Devourers would return someday. They hoped that when that day came, humanity would be ready, but still remain human. Back on Earth, Dr. Kevin Shaw was making discoveries that supported everything the Valerans had told them. Hidden in ancient ruins around the world, he found technology that was far more advanced than anything from those time periods. Stone tablets that contained mathematical formulas that wouldn't be discovered by human science for another 1,000 years. Metal objects made from alloys that didn't exist naturally on Earth. The most amazing discovery came from a sealed chamber beneath the pyramids in Egypt. Inside, Shaw found what could only be described as a library, filled with crystal storage devices identical to the ones Ryan was seeing on Valera Prime. When activated with the proper equipment, the crystals revealed detailed plans for spacecraft, weapons, and other technologies that were thousands of years ahead of current human science. "It's all here," Shaw reported to Admiral Lisa Morgan via secured communication. "Our ancestors didn't just fight in that war. They learned from it. They brought back technology and knowledge, then hid it until humanity was ready to use it again." Meanwhile, in Coalition space, Ryan was learning about humanity's unique role in the coming conflict. The Devourers weren't just another alien enemy. They were creatures that fed on the psychological collapse of their victims, using fear and despair as weapons more powerful than any physical force. Other species become paralyzed when faced with something they don't understand, Zethus explained. Humans become curious. Where we see impossible odds, you see an interesting challenge. This is why the Devourers fear you above all other species. As if to prove his point, news came that human scout ships had already engaged Devourer forces. At the edge of Coalition territory, Captain Brandon Lee of the UES Vengeance had led a successful raid on an enemy supply depot, using tactics that confused and frustrated the ancient enemy. "They expected us to run or to fight in predictable patterns," Lee reported. "Instead, we hit them from 6 different directions at once, took what we needed, and disappeared before they could respond. They're powerful, but they're not used to opponents who think outside established military doctrine." Ryan felt a surge of pride as he listened to the report. Humanity might have been isolated for 5,000 years, but they hadn't lost the qualities that made them unique. They were still the species that could look at an impossible situation and find a way to win. As the Defiance prepared to return to Earth with representatives from the Coalition, Ryan knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy needed humanity's help, and this time, humans would be ready. They had the technology, the knowledge, and most importantly, they still had the spirit that had won the ancient war. The silence was broken, the memories were returning, and humanity was ready to take its place among the stars once again. Fleet Admiral Tracy Johnson watched 300 human ships drop out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The combined human expeditionary force was the largest military fleet humanity had assembled since the ancient war. Each ship carried the best technology Earth could produce, mixed with alien designs recovered from the hidden archives and improved with human engineering. The target was the Korvax system, where Devourer forces had been attacking the last surviving planet for 2 weeks. Intelligence reports showed that over 50 enemy ships surrounded Korvax 3rd, systematically destroying the planet's defenses while preparing for a final assault that would wipe out millions of innocent lives. Captain Alex Turner commanded the lead squadron aboard the UES Retribution. His ships were smaller and faster than the massive Devourer vessels, but they carried weapons that had never been seen in this galaxy before. Human engineers had taken Valoran energy technology, Devourer weapon designs, and Earth manufacturing techniques to create something entirely new. "All ships, this is Admiral Johnson." Tracy's voice came through the fleet communications. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Use every advantage we have and don't give the enemy time to adapt to our tactics." The Devourers were expecting a traditional fleet engagement. Their ships moved into standard defensive positions, heavy weapons aimed at the approaching human force. What they got instead was something they had never encountered before. Alex's squadron split into 12 different groups, each one approaching from a different angle. Some ships dove below the planetary plane, others climbed high above it. Few squadrons seemed to disappear entirely, using stealth technology that the Devourers couldn't detect. The first Devourer ship died before its crew realized they were under attack. A human destroyer appeared from nowhere, fired a concentrated burst of energy weapons and vanished back into stealth mode before the enemy could return fire. Within minutes, the entire enemy formation was in chaos as human ships struck from every direction. "This is impossible," came a transmission from one of the Devourer commanders, translated by the fleet's computers. "Where are they coming from? How are they moving so fast?" Captain Sandra Kim piloted her experimental fighter, the EHF-7 Phoenix, through the middle of the enemy formation. Her ship was small enough to avoid the Devourer's heavy weapons, but fast enough to strike their weak points before they could respond. She had studied the enemy ship designs for weeks, learning every detail about their construction and systems. "Phoenix to all fighters," Sandra called over the radio. "Their shields are strongest at the front and sides, but the rear sections are vulnerable. Hit their engine clusters and they lose maneuverability." Sandra proved her point by diving toward a massive Devourer battleship, threading between its weapon turrets to reach the engine section. Her weapons tore through the enemy's rear shields, causing explosions that crippled the huge vessel. Before the other Devourer ships could target her, she was already attacking another enemy from a completely different direction. The space battle was only the beginning. Major Nicole Barnes led the 1st Human Marine Battalion in the assault on Korvax III itself. The planet's surface was covered with strange alien cities, their architecture unlike anything humans had seen before. The Devourers had established bases throughout the urban areas, using the civilian population as human shields. Nicole's troops moved through the alien city like water flowing around rocks. Where Valoran soldiers would have stopped to study the unfamiliar environment, humans simply adapted. They turned alien architecture into cover, used civilian vehicles as improvised weapons, and found ways to move through the city that the Devourers never expected. "Second Squad, use those floating platforms as mobile cover," Nicole ordered as her troops advanced through a district filled with buildings that seemed to defy gravity. "Third Squad, those energy conduits look like they can be overloaded. See? If you can use them against the enemy positions." The Devourers were powerful and well-equipped, but they had been fighting other species for so long that they had forgotten how to deal with truly unpredictable opponents. Their tactics were based on millions of years of experience against enemies who fought according to established patterns. Humans threw all those patterns out the window. Private Danny Brooks found himself trapped in a building surrounded by enemy forces. Instead of trying to fight his way out or calling for backup, he studied the building's alien technology until he figured out how to control its gravity systems. Within minutes, he had turned the entire structure into a weapon, dropping enemy soldiers into gravity wells while using the building's own defenses against them. Dr. Michelle Clark worked frantically in a mobile research station just behind the front lines. Every piece of Devourer technology that human forces captured was brought to her for analysis. Unlike scientists from other species who approached alien tech with caution and fear, Michelle dove into each new device with excitement and curiosity. "This is amazing," she told her research team as she examined a captured Devourer weapon. "Look at how they've combined energy manipulation with dimensional folding. If we can adapt this to our own weapon systems, we could increase our firepower by 300%. Within hours, Michelle's team had not only figured out how the enemy weapons worked, but had improved on the design. Human engineers took the alien technology and modified it using principles that the Devourers had never considered. The result was hybrid weapons that were more powerful than anything either species had created alone. The turning point of the battle came when Commander Tyler Ross proposed something that shocked even his own commanders. Instead of just defending coalition worlds, he suggested that human forces should attack the enemy's home territory while they were spread thin across the galaxy. "They expect us to fight defensively," Tyler explained to Admiral Johnson. "Every other species in the galaxy has done exactly that, but we have something they don't expect. We can strike deep into their territory while they're busy attacking coalition worlds." Tyler's plan was dangerous and ambitious. It required human fleets to travel thousands of light years into unexplored space using captured Devourer navigation data to find their hidden bases. If the plan failed, those fleets would be trapped behind enemy lines with no hope of rescue. But Tracy Johnson had learned to trust human instincts. She approved the mission, and within days a dozen human strike forces were heading toward the galaxy's edge where the Devourers had built their secret strongholds. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Human forces struck at Devourer supply bases, communication centers, and manufacturing facilities that had never been attacked before. The enemy, who had been pressing their advantage across Coalition space, suddenly found themselves under attack from behind. Captain Brandon Lee led one of these deep strike missions, targeting a massive Devourer shipyard that was building the vessels for their invasion fleet. His small force of destroyers and cruisers shouldn't have been able to challenge such a heavily defended target, but human tactics turned the odds in their favor. "Remember, we're not here to occupy territory," Brandon told his crews. "We're here to break things and leave. Hit hard, hit fast, and get out before they can organize a response." The attack was over in less than an hour, but the damage was incredible. The shipyard, which had been building enemy vessels for decades, was completely destroyed. Hundreds of partially completed ships were reduced to scrap metal, and the manufacturing facilities were damaged beyond repair. News of human victories spread throughout Coalition space, bringing hope to species that had been preparing for defeat. The Valerans watched in amazement as human forces accomplished things that should have been impossible. Other Coalition species began requesting human advisors to help them develop new tactics against the ancient enemy. But the most important change was in the Devourers themselves. For the first time in their existence, they were facing an enemy that not only refused to be intimidated, but actually seemed to enjoy the challenge of fighting impossible odds. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, and this time, they were determined to finish what their ancestors had started. Admiral Christopher Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Victory, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for the final assault. The Nexus cluster stretched before them, a collection of dark worlds at the galaxy's edge where the Devourers had built their primary stronghold. Thousands of enemy ships guarded the approach, while massive space stations bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The combined armada included ships from dozens of Coalition species, but human vessels formed the core of the attacking force. 3 years of war had taught the galaxy's defenders that human tactics were the key to victory against an enemy that had ruled through fear for millions of years. Lieutenant Colonel Ashley Green checked her equipment one final time before leading her Special Forces team into the transport shuttle. Their mission was the most dangerous of the entire operation: infiltrate the Devourer command center and disable the coordination networks that linked their scattered fleets together. "Remember, we're not trying to fight our way through their entire army," Ashley told her team as the shuttle prepared to launch. "We get in, break their communications, and get out. Without coordination, their fleets become individual targets instead of a unified force." The shuttle, equipped with the best stealth technology humanity could produce, slipped through the enemy's outer defenses undetected. Ashley watched through the viewports as they passed massive Devourer warships, each one large enough to destroy a human city. The enemy had grown confident over the millennia, never expecting that anyone would be bold enough to attack their home territory. Captain Derek Hall commanded the experimental ship UES Innovation, a vessel that represented the best of human engineering combined with alien technology. His ship could phase between dimensions, allowing it to appear inside enemy formations without warning. The innovation had become legendary among both human and alien crews for its ability to strike where the enemy least expected it. "Innovation. To all ships," Derek called over the fleet communications. "We're beginning our attack run. Remember, the enemy expects us to approach from normal space. We're going to give them something they've never seen before." The innovation vanished from normal space-time, reappearing moments later inside the enemy's defensive line. Derek's weapons opened fire on the Devourer command ships before they even knew he was there. By the time enemy gunners turned their weapons toward his position, the innovation had already phased back into dimensional space and reappeared somewhere else entirely. The sight of a human ship materializing inside their formations sent waves of confusion through the Devourer fleet. These ancient beings had conquered countless worlds, but they had never faced an enemy that could ignore the basic rules of space combat. General Karen Mitchell led the ground assault on the Devourers, Primary world, a dark planet covered with structures that seemed to absorb light itself. Her forces faced enemies that had evolved to feed on the despair of conquered civilizations, creatures that were as much energy as they were matter. First wave. Establish landing zones near the primary structures. Karen ordered as human dropships descended through the planet's strange atmosphere. Remember, these beings feed on fear and despair. Stay focused on the mission, watch out for your teammates, and don't let them get inside your heads. The Devourer defenders were unlike anything human forces had encountered before. They moved through solid matter like it was air, attacked with weapons that targeted the mind as much as the body, and seemed to grow stronger as the battle intensified. But human soldiers had trained for this moment, learning to fight an enemy that used fear as a weapon. Sergeant Danny Brooks found himself separated from his unit during the initial assault, surrounded by Devourer warriors in a maze of alien tunnels. Instead of panicking, he studied the enemy's movement patterns and began to understand how they used the tunnel system to their advantage. Within an hour, he had turned the enemy's own infrastructure against them, using their tunnels to launch surprise attacks while avoiding their superior numbers. Dr. Stephen Foster worked frantically in a mobile laboratory, analyzing samples of Devourer technology and biology that had been collected during the assault. What he discovered changed everything about humanity's understanding of their ancient enemy. They're not evil in the way we understand it, Stephen reported to the military. Commanders. They're more like a natural force, a species that evolved to consume civilizations the way we consume food. They literally feed on the collapse of societies, growing stronger with each world they destroy. This revelation led to the development of new weapons specifically designed to attack the Devourer's fundamental nature. Instead of trying to destroy their physical forms, human scientists created devices that disrupted the energy patterns the enemy used to feed on despair and fear. The final confrontation came when President Helen Ross, against all security protocols, traveled to the front lines to personally deliver humanity's ultimatum to the Devourer leadership. Her arrival shocked both human and alien commanders, but Helen had realized that this moment required more than military victory. "We know what you are," Helen said, standing in the ruins of the Devourer command center while enemy leaders materialized around her like living shadows. "We understand that you're not evil by choice but by nature. But that doesn't mean we'll allow you to continue destroying innocent worlds." The lead Devourer, a being of pure energy that hurt to look at directly, spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You cannot stop what we are. We have consumed civilizations since before your son was born. We will consume civilizations long after it dies." Helen stood her ground, even though every instinct told her to run from the ancient horror before her. "You're wrong. We've already stopped you once and we can do it again, but this time we're offering you a choice. Withdraw to the galactic void and never return, or face complete extinction." The Devourer leader studied the small human woman who dared to threaten beings that had ruled the galaxy's edge for millions of years. In her, it saw something that confused and disturbed it. A complete absence of the fear and despair that the Devourers used as food. Instead, there was only determination and a quiet confidence that humanity would do exactly what it promised. The war ended not with a massive final battle, but with a choice. Faced with opponents who understood them better than they understood themselves, the Devourers chose exile over annihilation. Their fleets gathered at the galaxy's edge and departed for the empty space between galaxies, leaving behind worlds they had ruled for countless centuries. In the aftermath of victory, humanity took its place as a leading member of the Galactic Coalition. The memory crystals discovered during the war were distributed to every human world, ensuring that the lessons of both ancient and recent conflicts would never be forgotten. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, established the first permanent human colony in Coalition space. The base was built on a world that had been liberated from Devourer control, a symbol of humanity's commitment to protecting the galaxy's freedom. Ambassador Victoria Price signed the Treaty of Stars in a ceremony attended by representatives from hundreds of worlds. The document formally incorporated humanity into the galactic community, but its final clause became the most famous. We came as strangers, fought as allies, and remain as family. Dr. Michelle Clark continued her research into hybrid technologies, developing new tools that combined the best discoveries from dozens of species. Her work laid the foundation for a new age of galactic cooperation, where the knowledge of many worlds was shared for the benefit of all. The galaxy had learned that humans were not just another warrior species, but something unique. Beings capable of incredible violence who chose to be builders and protectors instead. The 5,000 years of silence had not weakened humanity, but had refined it into something the galaxy had never seen before. As ships from Earth began regular travel to distant stars, carrying diplomats, scientists, and explorers to worlds that had only been dreams a few years before, the universe felt different. The silence that had lasted 5 millennia was truly broken, replaced by the voices of countless species working together toward a common future. The Devourers were gone. Humanity had answered the call to war, and the galaxy would never be the same.